Hi, I'm Susan Papanicholas from How Does Your Garden Grow in Seattle, Washington. It's the middle of October and I'm here today in a client's garden to show you this crazy purple-berried shrub. This is Callicarpa bodinieri Profusion, also known as Beautyberry. This is a plant that people never cease asking me about at this time of year. I get a ton of text messages from my friends and clients with pictures of this berry, with them saying, "What is this?" Because the berry is so vibrant and beautiful. It almost seems like this couldn't possibly be real or couldn't possibly be nature, but it is. This plant, all on its own, makes these gorgeous, vibrantly colored purple berries, and it's covered with them. Most of the year, it doesn't look like much. There's not a lot going on with it that catches your attention until October, when these berries start going from green into purple. It has a little tiny flower on it in spring that aren't very noticeable, and then those flowers fall off and the little tiny green berries start to form. But those berries don't really become something that you notice until they start getting their color on them in mid-October. And then you have them loaded down with these bright purple berries. It gets some bronzy, purpley tinged fall foliage and the leaves fall off. And then you have these berries left on the bare stems, which can also be really stunning in the garden. It'll last through the beginning of winter, but around midwinter, the birds start eating the berries and kind of strip the branches bare, and then you're left with just the bare branches throughout the winter. When I use this plant in my clients' gardens, I like to be really careful about where I put it. For one thing, it gets really, really big, 6 to 10 feet tall and like 8 feet wide. So I need to put it someplace where it's going to have a lot of room to grow. And on top of that, it's not a plant that looks spectacular year round. It really only comes into its own in the fall. And the rest of the year, it doesn't do a lot for the garden. So I like to place it where it has lots of room to grow, and also where it can be mixed in with other trees and shrubs and perennials, so that there's always something else happening in the garden during the times when this isn't shining, and then in the fall this will become way more noticeable in that mix as the berries start to get their color on them. You can prune this shrub to keep it a little bit smaller, and you can do that in a couple of ways. One is that this is a multi-stem shrub that kind of grows into a fountainy shape, so you get individual branches coming up out of the ground and spilling out and over. So you could each year cut maybe a third or a quarter of old branches out at the base. Just use your loppers and prune them down at the base. And that will help keep it smaller because you will only have young, new branches there. Your oldest branches would be 3 or 4 years old, depending on how often you're cutting it. So that can kind of help keep it small and rein it in and still keep that natural fountain shape that can be really nice. Some people will shorten this shrub, which can make it smaller and have a more compact growth habit. But I warn against that, because once you start shortening those branches down, it actually causes the branches to grow more vigorously from the point where you cut them. So you can continually shear it back and cut it back and it'll survive, but you'll be fighting it. It'll want to push out new growth and you'll have to cut that off. And so it kind of becomes a battle between you and the plant to keep it smaller. You can also just let it grow in its natural shape, as it's doing here, where it's almost turned into a small tree. Those multi-stems have come up and arched over, and it's filling, my goodness, like 10 feet across here with this beautiful canopy. This is working well because it's planted around some lilacs and evergreen plants and some low-growing perennials. So there's always something happening in this area of the garden, even when this isn't shining. But then right now, this really does become the star of the show. It's a super fun plant to grow if you've got the room for it. It's really fun to bring this bright color of berry into the garden. The birds love eating the berries. It's a great food source for them in midwinter. And you'll provide a really good source of conversation with your neighbors and your friends and family when you've got this really vibrant, beautiful berry happening in your garden.